Hello and welcome to Oregon Cancer Foundation's Topics in Breast Cancer mini conference. My name is Amy Johnston. I'm the director of the Oregon Cancer Foundation, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here today. Before we get started, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors. They are Myriad, Oncotype DX, Caris Life Sciences, Seattle Genetics, and Eisai. Today's conference would not be possible without these sponsors, and we thank them for their support and their belief in our mission and their participation today. As I said, my name is Amy Johnston. I'm the director of the Oregon Cancer Foundation. I'm joined here today by Katie Burke. She is our breast cancer resource coordinator. The two of us are going to be your facilitators for today's session. Before we get started with the session, I do want to familiarize you with the screen here. As an attendee, your microphone and your camera are off, but you can communicate with Katie and myself, as well as the panelists. By raising your hand, we can help you with any technical problems you have. You do have a chat button down at the bottom of your screen, as well as a Q&A button. If you're on a phone or a tablet, those buttons are going to be up at the top right of your screen. This session is scheduled to last for 30 minutes, with approximately 15 minutes of question and answer to follow. However, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to go ahead and click on that Q&A button and type those questions in. We will make sure that we get to those during the dedicated Q&A time. And with no further ado, we're going to go ahead and kick it off.
Morning. So again, my name is Joanne, and I am an oncology certified nurse that happens to be working in hospice right now. And I would like to talk a little bit about quality of life with a diagnosis of metastatic breast cancer. So as you're aware, people diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer can live many years. And so we want to talk a little bit about the quality of life during those years. So a palliative care program is not hospice. People who participate in a palliative care program, we just have conversations a little bit about what are these years going to look like for you? What do you want? What are your goals? It's not hospice. It's just a extra layer of support around you and your family and your caregivers during this very difficult time. So a social worker would come to your home and talk to you about goals. You're going to have good days and bad days. So a palliative care nurse could help you manage some of those symptoms on bad days and help you to decide what you want to do with those good days. They can also help you with caregiving resources, whether it be early on in your journey or later on when you might need a little bit more help. They can also help you with advanced directives. Advanced directives can be difficult for all of us, but having somebody walk you through that and making your wishes really known is a good thing. They can also help you with some resources in our community, whether they be financial or emotional, spiritual support. They're just there to really help you through this journey. So a palliative care team consists of social workers and nurses, providers, spiritual help, other community resources. It's completely free to you. The only time that you would have an expense is if you had a visit with a provider. There would be a normal copay. Other than that, it's completely free. If one of your goals through this journey is to stay out of the hospital, people who participate in palliative care programs spend much less time in the hospital. They and their family members feel much more equipped to manage symptoms, and we have way less hospital stay. They could also help you have some of the more difficult conversations with family members. and help you just decide what you want to do at this time in your life. There's a lot of joy, even during a cancer diagnosis. So a chance for you to talk to other people about what this time is going to look like for you. The unknown is super scary, but palliative care staff is just there for an extra layer of support to help you. When the time comes for you to transfer to a hospice, a palliative care can help with a very seamless transition to that. But mostly, we just want to focus on what is your life like right now? What can we do to make that a better experience for you? There's lots of joy to be had during this time. So we have Cascade Hospice has a, Cascade Health, excuse me, has a Palliative Care Plus program. You just would contact them and they would have a social worker reach out to you and start that journey for you. I think Peace Health also has one. That's an excellent program. So I think I will turn it over to Becca, who is going to talk to you a little bit more and also give you some tips on how to discuss things with providers. So thank you. Thanks to everybody for spending your Saturday morning a few minutes with us.
All right, thanks Joanne for covering that. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this quote that I had come across in the last couple years. And I am not necessarily a sports person. I'm going to share my screen with you for a minute and show you how this is true. When I worked in the chemo room, on Fridays during football season, we would get to wear football shirts for the Ducks. And in my thrifting, which is another hobby of mine, I was excited to find a $1.99 shirt at Goodwill. And it took me until, I don't know, mid-football season to look at it in the mirror, like, oh my gosh. So I'm going to show this to you for a second because it might make you laugh. Let's see if I can share my screen. Let's see if I can find that, how to do that. Here we go. Okay, so here we go, this is it. If you see this, so anybody see the problem here? Either somebody was too polite to tell me, that's a basketball net, or they thought I was just super excited about basketball season. So again, not necessarily a sports person. Another thing that I'd come across a while back that totally explains my, again, it's Oregon, we're athletic, but this is what I hear when I listen to sportscasters. And again, I'm going to see if I can share the screen properly, but let's see. Oops. Share this. This one made me laugh. Let's see, we'll go to the next one. Sorry. Oops, wrong one. Sorry, I'm not as good with, we'll go back to this other one here. I'll find it. Okay, here it is. And then we'll get to the meat. I just wanted to start it off with something that I thought was kind of funny. Here it is. So I'll let you read it for yourself, but when I saw this, I was like, yep, that's about what I hear when I listen to sportscasters talking. I'll give you a minute. It made me laugh. They're all out there sportsing really hard. Go ahead and do your sportsing. I kind of like the last part. My income is higher than most countries, but that's okay. All right, so that's the end of that. We'll get to the point being, it's an unlikely thing for me to get into anything related to sports. And yet I came across this beautiful quote that I will show you the video because his name is Stuart Scott. He was a very well-known sportscaster. He won an award, I think in 2016, and he had a beautiful 30-second little clip that I want to show you. And this changed my entire perspective on cancer. And we often hear and maybe use the phrase, I'm going to fight cancer. I'm going to win. This is a battle. And I understand I haven't been in that position And if I had a cancer diagnosis, maybe that would be my strategy. Like, okay, I'm going to beat this. We're going to fight, fight, fight. And you often hear that analogy. But the problem with that is I think that it helps to reframe a little bit, because we do know people will die of cancer. And so this is a beautiful video. Again, my tech challenged part of myself. Let's see if I can show it properly, but it's really beautiful. And it just gives a whole different perspective on how to view cancer. So let me get there. Give me 1 second here. Okay. All right. Sorry, 1 second here. Oh, dang it. We'll come back to it in a minute. So what I'll do is I'll just read it, actually, because I don't want to risk that I can't properly play the thing. So here it is. He said, when you die, that does not mean you lose to cancer. You beat cancer by how you live, why you live, and the manner in which you live. So live, fight like hell. And when you get too tired to fight, lay down and rest and let somebody else fight for you. This whole fight, this journey is not a solo venture. This is something that requires support. And man, I mean, it makes me tear up again just hearing that. I had a dear friend whose sister passed very early of breast cancer, and her son posted that as sort of a in memorial on her Facebook page. And that when I came across that, I thought, I need to remember that. And I have been able to use that with a couple patients already, even during hospice, who I think did struggle with the idea that, okay, so I'm dying, so I lost. And it's been really meaningful. So all this to say, this is your opportunity to live your life. As Joanne said, discuss with your family, discuss with your doctor, like, what are your goals? What is the most important to you right now? And so, I started thinking I would help you make some lists of questions to ask, but, I'll tell you, as I did some searching, those lists abound online. There are lots of resources for that. So my biggest encouragement for you is make the list. Just start with a list yourself. And so I recommend a list to yourself. What are the things that are most important to me? And it will be different for everybody, but make your list for yourself. The next one is make a list of questions to talk to your doctor about. And the doctors have, their list too. Goals of care, expected duration, side effects. And those are all things that obviously I want you to ask too if it doesn't come up. But there are other things, again, the questions abound online, and there's tons of resources, but have a list of questions. Uh-oh, we're gonna hear my clock here. Okay. And the other list to make is questions and discussions to have with your family. Your family is going to want to know how this is going to impact them, and they're going to want to know what you want out of this. And I really encourage you to have that conversation and make a list of things to discuss with your family. And another one is, if you can try to find your people. We all want to have community and find our people that are our support. And once you have found your people in your community, make a list of things to discuss with them, accept help. I've been involved in some groups over the years, making meals for people, helping with childcare. It's definitely an act of humility to actually be willing to accept help. And it's also, an act of giving and sacrifice on your part, because family and friends and your people want to know what to do. And sometimes the only thing they can think of is something like a meal, which you're probably capable of making a meal, or your family is if you're not feeling up to it. But however it works, a meal or someone coming to do your laundry for you, things like that. When you need help, it is actually really a giving thing to let somebody help you. And again, the small things are often the only thing people can think of doing. And the other one, I read some interesting things about having some prepared answers for acquaintances. I'm sure if you're struggling with cancer or somebody who has, people always, they mean well, but they're going to potentially share horror stories of what happened, or they're going to encourage you, oh, well, it's going to be okay, and kind of placating a little bit. And I think that it's nice to have some boundaries set on what, like things that you might say. I don't really feel like talking about this, or what I would love to have some encouragement, but right now that's not helpful. However, there's tons of resources on how to have those conversations, and even just saying truly, it's not, like I said, not something you want to talk about. So So I think having, again, these lists of questions and even just discussions that you want to have with yourself, really thinking with yourself, okay, what's important to me? What do I want to do through this? With your doctor and the medical team, and with your family and friends and your people. Again, and if you don't have people, try to hook up with some community support, some, there are, with COVID, it's probably online at this point, but support groups. It's nice to actually find a community that you can rely on when you really need something. Because a lot of times, from what I hear, friends over the years who have struggled with cancer said when the diagnosis comes, they often find their friends start fading away. And I think part of that is people often just don't know what to say. And sometimes there really is no good thing to say. I certainly have learned that over the years when helping people with cancer. There's just no really good answer other than being there with them saying, this stinks and I'm here for you. And I think that's often what people really need. And then again, the last one is just being prepared for what you might want to say with acquaintances and neighbors and, well-meaning, but either, offering kind of flat condolences or again, the horror stories. So I encourage you to look up some resources online, things that you can have already ready in the back of your mind, but also, flat out write a list of things. These are the things I'm going to ask, and these are the things I want to talk about with my family. And, palliative care does fit in with this, because the nice thing about palliative care is you can continue to have your treatment and have quality of life, but, and continue towards that goal of quality of life while you're in the middle of a palliative care program. So I think that's all I have to say. I do thank you for this opportunity. I don't feel it by any means like I'm an expert in this, so it was really a privilege to have been asked. And may I say I was very excited about an opportunity to actually put on lipstick for once. So I'll turn it back over to Amy and Katie, and thank you again for the opportunity.
Thanks, Becca.
Thanks so much, Becca. And thank you, Joanne, as well. So I think, that's something we talk about in our office pretty frequently, and it's a really important topic. So we really appreciate you both being here today. And I know that you've both told us this was a little outside your comfort zone, but thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for asking us.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Really appreciate it. Yeah.
So I'm guessing that a lot of the participants in today's webinar recognize you as nurses that maybe helped them while they were going through their own journey before you both made the switch over to palliative care and hospice. And we actually did receive a comment from one of today's participants, and this person says, "Thank you for saying that. I have admonished my friends not to ever say that I lost my fight with cancer. We're all going to die eventually, and just facing the fear that comes with all of the initial cancer treatments feels like I have already won. Now the task is to keep living and facing the unknown and fear of cancer coming back." So
that just gave me goosebumps. I'm goosebumping here.
That's a good thing. So if you guys have finished your presentation portion, I think we'd like to open up for question and answer. Okay. So for our attendees out there, the way you're going to do that is just click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and go ahead and type those questions in, and our facilitators will make sure that those get answered. Okay. Hey, Becca, we have a question. Oh, sorry, Katie.
Go ahead.
So the question is, I'd love to know who said the quote that Becca shared.
Yeah, and man, I wish I could have figured out how to do the video. If you Google Stuart Scott, S-T-U-A-R-T, Scott, and there's like he's accepting the award from an actor, and it's on YouTube, it's on CNN. I had it all set to go, but I couldn't seem to get my act together there. And it's beautiful. He ends up giving tribute to his daughter, but he starts it off with the whole quote that I shared with you, and it's worth your time to watch it, coming directly from his mouth. I mean, I'll tear up if I watch it again. So I highly recommend. So it's Stuart Scott. He was an ESPN sportscaster.
We have another question. Amy, are you trying to pull that up?
How'd you know? Yes.
But we do have another question. To connect to palliative care, who do they call? How do they do that?
So with Cascade, I have a phone number. It's 888-278-3050. And just tell them that you're interested in information about Palliative Care Plus. There are a bunch of employees that, social workers, nurse practitioner, nurses, spiritual, that would be willing to answer any questions that you have about it. And, you know, they can be as involved or as distant as you wish them to be. You can have them come out, they come to your house, and just give you all kinds of information about what they offer, and then you decide, is this something that I want a monthly visit from these people, or something that a resource I can call if I need something. It's really just to support you on your journey, just an extra layer of support, and what can we do to make this time the absolute best it can be.
And I saw Joan, thank you for that. It popped up that you can call in, but there will need to be a referral from your doctor, which is usually fairly easily doable. I mean, what doctor doesn't want another team to consult and make quality of life better? So thank you, Joan, for reminding us about that.
Do you guys know who funds palliative care? Is it something?
I'm pretty sure it's an insurance benefit. Joan, if you want to type in there, but I'm pretty sure it's usually covered by insurance, hence the copay if there is a provider visit, but otherwise I'm pretty sure it's covered under insurance. Is that right, Joan? Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Correct. Insurance, Medicare.
Okay. And then we have another question. When you start palliative care, how would you describe it to your family? My teenagers are really alarmed when they heard it, like it was scary to them, and that it felt like the beginning of the end.
Well, the whole word palliative, you know, we think of palliative of we're just going to treat symptoms. So I think I would describe it as, you know, I'm going to go on this journey, this cancer journey. We don't know what that's going to look like. We cannot have too many people care about us. So it's just another layer of support as they, as a family, walk through this journey. It's a positive. I can't think of a single negative thing about it. It's just one more layer of support to make, you know, quality of life is everything. And so if you can have some extra resources, extra support groups, other people's opinions to bounce questions off, maybe you would get good questions to ask your provider from some support from palliative care. It's just really a positive. It is not hospice. And I think the two get confused sometimes. It is not. Does that answer that question? Becca, do you have any input?
No, that sounds right to me. It sounds perfect.
I did find this this foundation. It's called the Feather Foundation, and it's written to help parents discuss things with their children, and to kind of keep the conversation going. So it's called the Feather Foundation, and I'll have to look deeper in whether or not they discuss palliative care and hospice, but it is a great resource as well.
Amy, I think I might be able to give another try at the video this time. You want me to, or have you already found it?
I found it, but the videos that I found are quite a bit longer. So if you have the abbreviated version, why don't you go ahead and share that?
Okay, sounds good. Here, let me see if I can get this done. Okay.
And you know what? We're doing fine on time.
Okay, it's 30 seconds, and I do remember, I think that the 30-second mark is when I will stop here. Here we go.
And when you get too tired to fight, lay down and rest and let somebody
So again, I'm going to get all teary, but I just feel like it's so meaningful. It has meant a lot for me in my approach to supporting people, both when I was doing oncology and even now with hospice.
I'm
So I
not
hope-
sure if everybody was able to see it, but
Oh,
maybe
shoot.
or hear it. I could see it, but I wasn't able
I
to.
could see it, but I couldn't hear him.
But
Oh.
maybe we could, Becca, could you copy and paste the address into the chat with
Absolutely. Yeah.
everybody? Okay.
Darn it. Yeah, I see people commenting they couldn't. Yeah, I'll do that right now.
That's okay.
Okay.
So after this session, we are recording. So down in the comments for the session, we will include links.
Perfect.
So it's okay. We will make sure that that gets shared.
Okay.
So if you guys aren't really able to answer this question, it's okay. But I have a question that we get asked quite frequently here in the office, which is, what are the differences between the different hospice groups in town? And in town, we would be referring to Eugene, Oregon.
I don't really know the differences. I suspect they are both excellent programs. I have information about Cascade because that's kind of my world right now. But I don't think you could go wrong. I think the important thing is that you reach out and maybe talk to both of them, see which one is a better fit for you.
I think in the palliative care program, the difference between us and Peace Health is that I don't know that they have a provider that does visits, whereas Cascade does.
I have heard that also, yes.
Okay. Thank you both.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Are there any other questions out there?
Thank you all for I'm reading the chat here. Thank you for the encouragement. I see some familiar names and I appreciate the connection very much.
So Becca, Joanne, I have a question for you. So that question is, as a caregiver or a friend of someone who is, currently battling cancer, if there, someone is out there and they know that, it is terminal, is it appropriate or okay for caregivers or other family members to reach out before the patient themselves has, or is that inappropriate? And if so, what's the best way to go about that if they have questions?
Well, I don't think you can love too much. So I think that listening, if your loved one says, in fact, I had a person going through this a couple years ago, and she just simply said, I am not ready to talk about this yet. And that's okay. So you back off. But I think, you staying your distance is not going to change the fact that they've been diagnosed with this life-limiting illness. So I think reaching out to them and letting them know simply, I'm here. I can just come sit with you. We don't even have to talk about it, and follow their lead.
Amy, are you talking about if a caregiver were to reach out to Cascade? So is that what you? Sorry,
Yeah, I am, because we occasionally do get the question. We get phone calls. It's okay. We get phone calls or emails from from caregivers, from sisters, from brothers, who have questions about palliative care, who have questions about hospice, and their loved one doesn't want to have those conversations yet, but they just have a lot of questions.
Sure.
And so that the question that we get posed is it okay for the caregiver or the loved one or the family member to contact themselves or not?
Yeah, I think it's certainly appropriate, and I think Cascade would be happy to answer questions. Obviously they won't be able to give any kind of advice or anything regarding management of symptoms if we're not officially on board, but we can certainly talk about all that's involved with hospice and palliative care. And there are informational visits, and I know you're saying that if the loved one is not ready to have that talk, maybe that wouldn't be helpful, but just because someone comes to the home to talk about the services, either palliative care or hospice, doesn't mean that you have to sign up. We do have informational visits, sometimes even before admission, just to say this is what we're about, and you can think about it and get back to us. So it's a non-commitment opportunity.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question.
Not at all.
I loved what you had to say too, Joanne. Yeah, your answer was wonderful too.
I think that is, you know, the truth of it is a lot of times because we, as a society, we think it is a fight and we're losing the battle when something does happen, that it is a sign of defeat by even asking questions about palliative care, when the truth of it is palliative care is another way of providing quality of life. So
yeah, agree completely.
Somebody asked, does the provider come to your home when they do visits?
Palliative care program, yes, if needed, and hospice if needed too. But that's where, as Joanne mentioned, there is a copay. Joanne, is there something else you wanted to offer about that? You covered more of the palliative care program than I did, so.
Maybe Joan can reiterate that. I believe they do. I believe they come to your house, and maybe at the moment we do Zoom, I'm not sure, but I believe they do.
So Joan just replied, absolutely, I come to them.
Yeah, nice.
Fantastic. And I know you covered this earlier, but I just, again, want to ask this question. The difference between palliative care and entering into hospice, you know, one of the key differences would be that anyone entering into palliative care can continue their treatment.
Absolutely.
Whereas that would not be the case with hospice.
Yeah.
And I think one of the benefits of having the palliative care program that also has, if needed, eventual transition to hospice is that you're familiar with the team, you're familiar with the providers, and it can make that transition seamless if such a transition is needed. I mean, of course, we all hope that isn't needed, and palliative care helps you get through the symptoms and you do great. But in the event that someone does eventually need to go into hospice, it's nice to already have a familiar team. I think that's important.
One of our physicians that's watching said he agrees. He strongly encourages information visits, especially if they're starting the last line of treatment. And can somebody go from palliative care to hospice and then say that if there's a new study drug, then are they able to, if they're wanting to try that study drug and they qualify, are they able to get off hospice?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. You can revoke hospice anytime you want, and it's instantaneous. If today someone on hospice says, right now I want to go to the ER or I want to go start treatment, it's effective immediately. So there's not a commitment when you sign on for hospice.
Well, and we even have people do all of that in 24 hours. Revoke hospice, do whatever it is that they want, get information, get some sort of treatment, and then be back on hospice the next day. It's not ideal, but it happens.
Yeah.
We want the very, very best thing for every single individual patient, and every single individual patient is different. So you have to do what's right for you. And I think you'll get support from every single person at Cascade, regardless of their palliative care or hospice care. We want the best thing for you.
Are either of you able to talk a little bit about the Pete Moore Hospice House and what that is, or is that not your area of expertise?
I know Joanne would love to share about that.
You know, I had an experience with the Pete Moore Hospice House prior to me working for Cascade, and it's one of the things that kind of shoved me in that direction while I was deciding which hospice organization I wanted to go through. My father passed away about 1.5 years ago at Pete Moore, and I cannot say enough about that experience. I don't want to get too emotional, but it was absolutely amazing. I felt carried by the tribe there. They were amazing. There's several different ways to get into Pete Moore Hospice House, which you could get information from Cascade about what those are. But it's a beautiful resort-like atmosphere. I was able to stay in the room with my dad, sleep there. I ran around that place in my socks. I've just absolutely felt like they had my back. One night I was laying there in bed listening to my dad breathe, and a nurse came in and put a warm blanket on me. Just above and beyond. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. I would encourage anybody, right now with COVID, they're not letting a lot of people in, but when this is over, I would encourage anybody to call them and see about touring it. It's absolutely gorgeous. The grounds are gorgeous. There's a pond back there. You can just walk around. There's a beautiful gazebo. The beds, the doors, the individual doors are wide enough that a patient can be wheeled in their bed out onto their private patio to enjoy some outdoors. It's just lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. All right.
I think we got one more question.
We do.
Do all palliative care team communicate with each other about all of your care? Like if I'm having a scan or something, are results also sent to the social worker, etc.?
And they have interdisciplinary meetings where they conference with the social worker and the nurse and the provider and discuss what is going on with patients. Absolutely. Does that answer that question? I hope so. There's lots of communication about what's going on with all the participants in the program.
I think, I think that is helpful just because then when a new team member comes on board, the client doesn't have to repeat everything, especially when their time is limited or just don't want to do it at that point.
Yeah.
It's definitely an amazing team there. Every week, the staff gets together and discusses what's going on with individual patients, and it's just a really seamless transition between each staff member. I love it.
Thank you guys so much.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Your morning and
Our pleasure.
A hot topic that not a lot of people like to talk about, and so thank you guys.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you both so much. So if there aren't any additional questions, we'll give it maybe another 30 seconds or so if there's somebody who's frantically typing and before we close this session. So for those of you that are going to be with us all day that have an all access ticket, the next session of the day will be genetics and breast cancer. Is all cancer inherited? And that is presented by Catherine Murray, genetic counselor. It's going to be a great session as well. So if you're not signed up for that and you're interested, let us know. Otherwise, that will be the session that we will start a little before 11 o'clock this morning. All right. Katie, I don't see any additional questions right now.
I think we could all, one of the things about Zoom is, or any conference, is having a little bit of time to wiggle. So maybe we'll hop off a little bit early and allow people to make sure nobody gets a blood clot. And wiggle into the jumping jacks, whatever you might need. I'm used to kids, so I'm like, hey, go take a lap. Anyways.
We will. We'll all take a break here. So with that, Becca, Joanne, thank you both so much for being so generous with your time this morning and for presenting today. It was just fantastic, and you shared some really wonderful information that is much needed. So thank you both so much. And with that, we are going to stop today's recording, and we will see you in the next session in about 10 minutes or so.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you, everyone.